Hello, hi everyone, and welcome to Aquarian Radio at aquarianradio.com. And I am your host, Janet-Lessin, and today my co-host is Teresa J. Morris, who will be joining us in just a few minutes. She's finishing up her Cosmos Connection show that she does on Revolution Radio. So she's probably just ending now and logging into her radio station where we simulcast. Her radio station is Teresa J. Morris ET Radio, and my radio station is Aquarian Radio, as I said before. And today we are doing an episode of Alien Contact Organization. And our very special guest today is Suzanne-Chancellor, and she is a lifelong abductee and experiencer. Upon reading Whitley Strieber's Communion in 1987, she began to recover memories of visitations from otherworldly beings that began in 1966 at her childhood home in Pasadena, California. She's the mother of two grown children, and she was forced to keep her experiences to herself for fear of ridicule and to potentially lose custody of her children. But as her experiences continued and started involving other family members, she realized that she was not alone. She started blogging about them in hopes that others would connect with her to try and put together the pieces of this cosmic puzzle. Taking her story to the airwaves, she began hosting her podcast, Random Alien Brain Droppings. I love that name, which is also the title of her blog, where she interviews other experiencers. Oh, I hope she has me on her show. Authors and researchers on the subject of UFOs, abductions, and all other high strangeness that seems to surround the phenomenon. Suzanne spoke publicly for the first time in 2012 at the Experiencers Speak conference in Portland, Maine, and she was asked to present again in 2013 alongside Stanton Friedman, Peter Robbins, and Kathleen Marden, amongst others. And she is in the process of writing two books, one about her personal journey and the other about synchronicity and how it has affected her life and meeting her cosmic twin. So I hope she tells us about that. I'm going to put her on live here. Aloha, Suzanne. This is Janet. How are you?
Aloha, Janet. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on the show tonight.
Oh, well, I'm real excited to have you on. I listened to you, and I can't remember what it was I was listening to, but I listened to you on another show, and that's how I found you. And that's what I do at the end of the day after I, eat dinner and my husband cooks, and I wash the dishes, and then I come here and I spend hours just researching this. I'm addicted to it. I also am a lifetime experiencer, and it seems like we might be around the same age because yours began in 1966, and mine began back in the 50s, actually, but a lot of those things got repressed, and so I began journaling and blogging and writing, and that process brings back those memories. Plus, I married my psychotherapist, so sometimes we do hypnosis, but I do everything I can to consciously recall everything and document it, and then I say, okay, honey, let's go explore this. Let me just, I'll get more of your story, but just one moment of doing a little bit of logistics, see if TJ is there.
I'm
Aloha,
here.
TJ.
We're listening to you. Thank you for joining us. We've already announced we're simulcasting with Aquarian Radio. This is TJ Morris ET Radio and TJ Morris with all her people, including Thomas Becker. Let me just introduce him to you, Janet. Thomas Becker, are you there?
Yes,
apparently not.
Good evening.
Oh, there he is. Wonderful. Thank you, Thomas. And this is Janet-Lessin with Aquarian Radio, which you're familiar with. We have several people here tonight, Janet. Thank you, everybody, in my chat room. Janet, we're looking forward to what have you got planned for us?
Well, we have
I think, people here.
Excellent. And I'm launching my chat room. I haven't launched it yet. So just to announce to everybody, we have two numbers, 646-649-0893, if you want to talk to one of our hosts. And your number is TJ 347 945-7207, correct?
Yes, ma'am. I don't know if Helen Parks is here, but several people, I don't know if you invited people, they may be on my board, so please ask me. I know Helen Parks was going to show up from Australia, I believe. If I have
wonderful.
a 443 and I have a 443 number. 443, you're live and on the air? Yeah, I need to connect all these people and see who they are.
How are you doing?
Find out who they are.
Yeah, just let me say 443. Tell us your name.
Yes. My name is Arlene.
Hi, Arlene. Where are you calling?
I'm calling from Baltimore, Maryland.
Thank you much. We appreciate you being here. I'm going to have an interview with Janet-Lessin in Hawaii. So thank you for joining us and find out who it is. But
you're really breaking up the horn, TJ. We can hardly hear you. It's not. Do you want to call in on your phone? And you can leave the Skype running your program, but if you call on your phone, we might be able to hear you better.
Sounds good. I'll do that, Janet.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just really... Okay. She's calling right back in. Sorry. Thanks for bearing with us while we do our logistics here. So she's going to call back in. I won't know when she's back into her show. In the meanwhile, Suzanne, hi. I'm sorry, I'll get back to you. And then, listeners, we will get to you one at a time here, but for the first part of the show, I'd like to focus on Suzanne and her journey with extraterrestrials. And would you like to begin and tell us about yourself and your story and how you became a abductee contact experience?
Okay, I'm getting a little bit of feedback from your end, Janet.
Okay, let me see what I do. I'm going to walk away from the board. Did that help?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Wow.
Perfect.
That's weird. Okay, go ahead. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, my name is Suzanne-Chancellor. I'm originally from California, where I was born. I lived there up until about 2.5 years. Actually, no, 2 years ago now. I moved to Rhode Island in 2012. I am a lifetime experiencer. I grew up in Pasadena, California, which is very close to Los Angeles. And as a child, I was claimed by my mother to have a very vivid imagination. And upon reading Whitley Strieber's book in 1987, the book Communion, I was in quite a bit of a shock because I felt as if he was writing my life story. And I know that you can probably attest to the fact that many people who are experiencers have claimed the very same thing right up to just even looking at the cover. And I realized that all the things that I had thought in my life were dreams were actually reality. And in my 20s was when this happened, and all of these memories started coming back to me, but I had nobody to share them with because I was a mother at the time, and I was very afraid that people would obviously think that I was insane. And so I did keep it to myself, but I did as well begin to journal my experiences. I remembered my very first experience, which happened when I was 4 years old in 1966, and now we all know how old I am. But I recalled an event where I remembered being brought back into my bedroom, being carried by what I thought were a bunch of small children, and they carried me back to my bed and tucked me in. And in the morning, when I woke up, I said to my mother that I needed a Band-Aid for my belly button. And she just looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, Mommy, I need a Band-Aid. And she says, why? And I said, because they told me that I needed to put a Band-Aid on it or it would get infected. And she basically went into the bathroom and said, here you go. And she gave it to me. I put it on myself. And she says, who are they? And I said, the people from my dream last night. So upon reading and doing my own personal research for my own journey, hearing about these experiments and things that are done to a lot of women especially, I started to think that might be a possibility. Obviously I don't have any proof of that, but I just started really doing my research a little bit more into my own journey and trying to find other analogies to other experiences that were congruent to mine. And going down that rabbit hole has led me to remember so many more events. I mean, I could tell you what's really weird is I can remember at least 30 events, that I know were of.
Well, that's really not unusual. I know you're censoring yourself and you're saying, because I at one point thought I was crazy when I started listing the events, and they're just too numerous to count. And that's the sign of someone that's had lifelong experiences. I think that's more real than people who say never one or two things. I think they're suppressing it. It's called lacunae.
Right.
They suppress it. Maybe not traumatic. The incident wasn't traumatic, but it was traumatic to, like what you were doing with, that you know something that is against the norm for the rest of society, so you can tell them. So that was the trauma. So
right, exactly.
Very interesting. Yeah, go ahead. Continue.
And the things that you do remember, which is interesting, if I can remember 30 events, then what about all the ones that I've suppressed? So that's very true as well. I also have a podcast, like you said. It's called Random Alien Brain Droppings, where I do interview other experiencers. And it's interesting that there are a handful of people who remember a lot, and there are those who don't. And there are the ones that have the regressions, and there are the ones who choose not to, and I'm on the latter end of that. I have not had a regression. I do believe that I'm supposed to remember the things that I'm supposed to remember in their time organically. I don't feel for myself that there's any benefit to relive these experiences, especially the ones that are traumatic. Obviously, I repress them for a reason. I'm fine with that, and my life is fine. My PTSD, I suffered in silence, and I dealt with it my own way. As I got older, in my 20s and my 30s, I started having different experiences. The experience seemed to evolve into more of an evolution of my consciousness, almost like I was having a consciousness awakening to the other possibilities of what these beings might actually be. Maybe they aren't necessarily, the physical entities that would come and stand by your bedside and play a game of cards with you. You know what I'm saying? It became more of an interdimensional reality for me, because it started involving other things such as heightened psychic awareness, major synchronicities in my life, a lot of precognitive dreams. So I started believing that as I was evolving, the experience was evolving along with it, and maybe the beings were evolving as well, or maybe we evolved to the point to where we have access to things that we might not have if we weren't open. So, I mean, we could go on and on.
Let me ask you a few questions about what you just said, because that was a lot of information here.
Yeah, it really was.
I want people to think about what you're saying, because I heard that on another show, and I thought about it. And so and the question is, why do some people have negative experiences, and why do some people have positive experiences? And what you're saying is part of your own evolution probably goes into how you perceive your experiences. Mm-hmm. Maybe, say that again. That was just profound. Go ahead.
As we evolve consciously, the experience seems to be evolving alongside us. And maybe it could be our interpretation of the events. Maybe the trauma or the negative aspect of it is how we perceive it. And if it's something that we can understand, there seems to be a lot larger negative connotation to the experience. I truly believe that. And as well, maybe these quote-unquote negative or malevolent things that are happening to us are only perceived to be that or such. But on their end, they're just doing what they're designed to do, and they don't really understand why we would, consider it to be a negative situation. Do you know what I'm
Janet,
saying?
can I say something real quick?
Go ahead.
I'm trying to still have
feedback.
I know.
Horrible feedback. Are you still on Skype? You're gonna have to connect with Skype and call back into your show, because it's just it's not working. We can't get through the show this way. But we want to have you on. So can you?
She needs to be on a headset.
I have people on my show here. I can hear you.
You won't lose your show, TJ.
I'm on the phone.
Can she put on the phone? Okay. Does she have a headset that she can wear?
Well, I'm on my headset. Okay. I'll hang up.
Try. I don't know what to say, TJ. It's just total Echoville. Do you have a blog talk, Suzanne? Your blog talk?
I don't have blog talk now.
Oh, using another system. Yeah. Anyway, there you are. Making a lot of noise. All right, Suzanne, let's keep going. TJ, let us know when you're back on, and we'll test it again. But go ahead, Suzanne. Sorry for the interruption.
Thomas Becker, can you hear me?
That's perfect.
Let's
that
see.
Sounds perfect.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you do?
Okay, so we're here, and I don't know that simulcasting is working. We've got people here.
No, we can hear you.
Tommy Hawksblood, can you hear me now? Says, this sounds cool, TJ. You sound like you were in Star Wars. Well, thank you. Tommy, can you hear me? Well, Thomas can. Tommy was having trouble listening, so I guess what we're going to do
can
is
you
I
hear
know
me,
that we
TJ?
can simulcast.
TJ,
I only have
you
trouble when I try to simulcast with Janet. So
TJ, can you hear me?
If everybody on my end hears me, then it's Janet. So let me undo her. And I don't think simulcasting works too well. Do you, Thomas Becker? It doesn't
seem to be doing real good.
No, it didn't. Okay, we may not could do that, whoever she's interviewing. Diana, are you here today with me? Diana, out there? Diana, can you hear me? Okay, who's 916? Okay, well, I guess we're going to have to do separately, folks, because I don't see how simulcasting is assisting us. And I'll have to apologize because Janet has her show and we have ours. So,
hi, Suzanne, are you there?
I am.
Okay, we're just going to continue for a little bit, and then we can maybe call into her show. I'm going to hang up. Okay, we'll just continue the interview. Sorry about that. And she can continue up there. Yeah. Normally it works, but I think the whole problem is Skyping in the first place. You just don't use Skype because Skype doesn't work on on Blog Talk. All right. So now we're personal conversation here too. That's fine. We can do it this way. So what you said about Whitley Strieber really hit a chord, because that was one of the greatest awakenings for me as well. When I read Communion, right, it was just so profound. In fact, the night I was reading about the electrical disturbances that happened in his house, I fell asleep. I left it, actually my bookmark was right in that part about the electrical disturbances. And I woke up like around 4 a.m., 3:30, 4 a.m., and the television was blasting full force. And it woke me up. I go, what in the world? And I was so freaked out because I had read that, and I made my husband go shut it off. I wouldn't leave the bed, and he cooperated. At first he was protesting. He said, you gotta shut it off. I go, no, you have to. So I think that was a direct message, right? It was beyond synchronicity.
Yeah,
and that's
definitely.
How they played with me through my childhood. So let me go over your sequences again, because I was a little bit distracted. Now I'm here, and it's I'm not getting the feedback. Okay, so you started having things in 66. What was the first thing that happened to you that you became aware you were taken out of your bed?
Right, that
was
was it. Right. Uh-huh. And I don't remember anything in between at all. I don't know where I went, what happened. The following summer, though, I was in daycare. My mother worked full-time during the summertime when school was out, and I was pretty much a loner when I was a kid. And after we had nap time, we'd have recess, and I usually play alone. And I was wandering around the play yard, and there was a little hole in the fence, and I just wandered through it. And behind the play yard was a huge field, and there was an abandoned barn out there. And so I went in it, and I realized it was an old horse stable. And there was a little stand where there was a saddle, and there was a bridle hanging on the wall. And as I'm sitting in there, I hear this buzzing sound. It was so loud. It was like a swarm of bees. And everything got really, really bright. And I thought, what the heck is going on? So I put my hands over my ears, and the buzzing wouldn't go away. It was almost like it was coming from inside me. And I could not get it to stop. And so I just held my hands on my ears, and I crouched down on the floor, and I closed my eyes and waited for it to go away. And when it went away, I opened my eyes, and it was dark outside. And
wow. I have to stop you there. Oh, my God. You have a conscious recall of something that's not conscious for me. I
really?
heard the buzzing. I was probably four, maybe four. It was right before I started school, so probably summer before kindergarten. So that's
same here. It was the summer before kindergarten.
4 or 5. Yeah,
right,
4 or 5.
Right, exactly.
And I came in the house. I said, "Mommy, a bee stung me," and behind my ear was a huge. It was all swollen up behind my right ear. And then, fast forward in time, I was reading Bud Hopkins, and he says that it's like a bee. It's their drone. They have a little drone, and it knocks you out. It actually stings you or something, and then that's when they put the implant behind my right ear. And
wow.
And then my mother was so concerned, she took me to the doctor. The doctor says, "I have no idea what that is." But what's really interesting, fast forward, I'm going to be 61 in February. I'm losing my hearing in my right ear, where the implant is. And I just talked to a nurse practitioner this morning who was doing an exam of my husband for his insurance, and she said, well, there's 2 types of hearing loss, and the second one is nerve damage outside of your ear. And I go, whoa, and I didn't tell her I have an implant from the extraterrestrials.
Right, what do you say?
Yeah, but do you think you have an implant? Do you have any kind of, it's supposed to be the right ear. Have you ever felt behind your right ear?
I have not behind my ear, but I do have something. I'm not going to say, obviously I have not had any surgery there to find out what it is, but I've always had this little hard piece of, it feels like a bone fragment that I can kind of move around up above my hairline over my left eyebrow. And
your left eyebrow, okay.
Over my right above my hairline. So it's actually in my scalp.
It's in your scalp. Oh, okay.
Right. And sometimes it feels really like sore, and I can kind of move it around a little bit. And I went and had, this is a weird story, many years later, I'm going to fast forward to 1994. My family and I were driving home from my mother's house for Thanksgiving dinner, and we were living in Camarillo, California, which is about 40 miles north of Los Angeles, and we saw this streak of light. It was something green, just go right over our car, right across the freeway. And my children were very young, and we all commented on it. And my ex-husband said, "Oh, my God, what was that?" I said, "I don't know." And so we kind of went home. We never really talked about it again. And then 2 days later, there was an article in our local paper about, which was really weird. It was a MUFON article in our local little paper about 2 women who were driving down the very same freeway on the very same night. and they were driving to a place called Ventura, which is about 12 minutes north of Camarillo. And they said what happened was that they were driving, and something that would take 12 minutes took 2 hours, and they had no idea what happened in those 2 hours. And so I thought, oh, my God, I wonder if that street light has something to do with them. And so at the end of the article, they said, well, if anybody has any information about this event, please contact the local MUFON county director. And so I called her, which was the first time I'd ever reached out to anybody about anything that I thought was extraterrestrial in my life at that point. And I talked to her, and I told her what had happened with us. And she asked me, has anything like this ever happened to you before? And I thought, oh, my God, is this it? Am I going to open up the, Pandora's box right now? And so I told her, I said, well, actually, yes, I have my whole life. And I started telling her just a couple of things as I'm telling you tonight. And she stopped me, and she said, is there any way I can come over to your house tomorrow?
Wow.
I would love to interview you. And she said, I would love to bring a gentleman, a local doctor, to come and check you out, if that's okay with you. And so they came, and she ended up bringing Dr. Roger Lear with her, and he lived in my hometown. So he examined me. Yeah, so he ended up examining me, and he asked me if I had any strange lumps or anything, and so I pointed it out to him, and he examined it, some notes, and he asked me if I would like to have it removed. And I had the weirdest feeling. I almost felt as if it wasn't supposed to be taken out. And I just said, you know what, I'm all right with it.
That's interesting you say that, because I had a psychic. I once went to, I moved from Pennsylvania over to Oahu, and I was brand new, and I was trying to find people, to be friends with, and I ended up going to, a lot of the New Age type things, right? And one day this group said, we're going to go up and visit this lady, and I didn't even know what it was about. We were just going to go up and visit her, and they said, do you want to come? And I said, sure, I'll go along. I was, very adventurous. But then everybody disappeared. We got to the lady's house, and everybody disappeared. And I ended up sitting in the living room alone with this lady, and I didn't know what the purpose was. And she just started doing a spontaneous reading. Now, she didn't know me from Adam, but she started saying, oh, you have implants from extraterrestrials. And then she said, there's one behind your ear, and it's in 2 pieces, and it's for, she gave me purposes. I think that was communication. She said you got one under your lymph node, and all kinds of places, and she was like right on, and I would touch, and I go, yeah, that's where it sometimes vibrates, or I feel pain, or I feel something happening there. And she said that each thing had a purpose. One was to prevent me from getting AIDS.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I had said I was never going to get them out either, and I think that's they all had positive. One was a tracking device, right? But I like being found.
Right.
I
don't necessarily feel that they need. Obviously, contact is happening in many ways, and I really don't feel the need to have an implant as a tracking device. It just seems really archaic in whatever way. I almost feel it's more of a just monitoring our bodies or our genetics, possibly. And obviously we've heard that there are a lot of familial or generational experiencers going with certain bloodlines, which I do have in my family as well. So I really feel that it's more for that and not necessarily to be
right,
trapped.
yeah, for health, yeah. So, okay, so you think it's like health monitoring, and I think that they have intervened times when my life was in danger, that I was at risk of, leaving the body. I think they've done some adjustments, but I've never had a negative connotation except one time. But I don't want to. This is my interview of you, so I'm going to stay focused on you.
No, that's okay. You can share.
Yeah. So the one time I saw a reptilian, although I blocked its face for years. The benefit of sometimes doing, hypnosis on it. It's not that it just allowed me to relax, to recall more information around the episode because I felt traumatized when it happened. But upon reviewing it, I realized that I was just like the cat at the vet, right? I'm sure my cat thinks, oh my God, this is horrible, right? But I was having a cat at the vet experience with the reptilian who was really just trying to teach me how to go out of my body and communicate with them. Mm-hmm. So, but back to you. So that's very, very interesting.
So where were we?
I don't know. We'll just keep going. We're in a flow of consciousness, and that's because experiencers and we're sharing, and it's so profound because I've been going to these contacting experiencers groups at all the conferences, but I didn't get all the way to Maine. I was so pissed off. I go, Maine? I'm in Hawaii. Do you realize?
Oh, that's pretty far.
So long to get there. But I said, do one in the middle, like Arizona or something, where it's more accessible.
Right.
But most of them have been saying things like, oh, I saw. Now they've got from the lights in the sky. Now they got, but they're not conscious. I got knocked out and da. And it's like, oh man. So even with people coming out about their experiences, I felt lonely because well, who's having the conscious experiences? So
Right.
Centered myself because it sounded like, well, I'm having all these. It sounds like you're bragging, right? But no, I don't want to brag. I don't want to make them feel, I'm not in any kind of comparison.
Everyone's journey is different, and we can't expect everybody to be on the same path. Totally fair. And those people who are saying those things eventually will end up having their experiences evolve as well. I truly believe that. Because it has to keep going, and it's generational, and, we're all going to pass on out of this lifetime, and so other people are going to have to keep the ball rolling, per se, to keep evolving here on Earth, to get to the point where we are to have, a global awakening of consciousness, and it will happen.
So let's continue with your story. That's my phone ringing, just ignore that. Don't know if you could hear it, but so what happened? What was the next profound episode?
Profound, yes. So I had, after that experience in the schoolyard, where I was basically missing when I came to after it was dark in that shed, I heard a bunch of people calling my name, and I heard my mother's voice, and so they were looking for me, obviously. It was dark out, and they found me. I came out, and I said, I have no idea what happened, and I got in trouble. I got a spanking from my dad when I got home, and then I knew that, something was really wrong, and they would never believe me that I wasn't intentionally hiding, you know what I'm saying? So my next memory was in 1971 when I was 9. I will say I had a dream, because I know that a lot of people equate them to being just that. At the time, I dreamed that I was on a craft, and it was my first experience with the grays where it didn't feel negative. They were all in the periphery in the craft in the main room where I was, but I had no fear of them for the very first time, and I thought that was very strange. And when I looked to my left, there were two what I would call hybrid teenagers, a boy and a girl, and they were working on something, but they were the only ones that actually turned around and looked at me and made eye contact. But that's all they did. They just kept on doing what they were doing. And then in walked this huge being, and I mean, he was probably over 7 feet tall, and granted I was 9 at the time, so anything would seem really tall, but he was not frightening. In fact, he seemed very full of light and love and just warm, and I felt a very good feeling about his energy. And he looked at me, and I looked at him like, what is happening, and he said I don't know how he did this, but there was this almost like a holographic image that just popped up in between us, and it was an algebraic equation, which at the time I didn't know what it even was, but in retrospect I realized that's what it was. But it was all three-dimensional. It was some sort of a formula or something. And I said, I don't understand this. I mean, I hate math. So
right.
He just said to me telepathically, you will understand when it is time. And so I don't know if that was a download or if it's something that I will recognize at some point in my life. Somebody has said to me, have you ever thought about maybe having hypnotic regression to try and remember what it was so you could write it down? And, I have to get over that hump. But the next thing he said to me was something very interesting. He said that the cure for cancer was something that we used every day. And, obviously a 9-year-old isn't going to be thinking about things like cancer. We're going to be thinking about playing with our Barbie and, watching TV.
Right.
So it seemed like a very benign statement to me. And I just looked at him and I telepathically thought back. I said, oh, you mean like toothpaste? And he just kind of chuckled, and he said, yes, just like that, which
wow.
didn't make any sense at all. And then I was shown a symbol, which I had since drawn after a meditation. It came to me, and I drew it, and I put it on my blog just in case anybody might recognize what it might mean or if it had any meaning at all. But I've had a few people say that it looks almost like a crop circle, so who knows? But in that same experience, I remember thinking, what does this all mean? What is happening? And he looked at me and said, follow me. And so he went to the side of the craft, and he put his hand across the edge of the craft, almost like you were wiping the window screen of your car. And when he did that, it opened up, and I could see the earth. And I went, oh, I get it. And I don't know why I said that, but I just, all of a sudden, started making sense. This is what's happening. Then he took me down this hallway, and there were all these different arches of different rooms. And on the first one, I looked to my right. There was a room full of, it looked like young kids just like me, and they were watching this screen, almost like they were hypnotized. But it was like a slideshow, but it was moving really quickly, almost like it was subliminal, where they were impressing images, I felt, into our minds just to remember. And it was just the same thing that we've heard over and over again. There were things of, war and catastrophe, apocalypse and famine and hate and fires and earthquakes. And I just, at that point, it just seemed like a horrible movie, that I didn't want to watch. And that was the last thing I remembered from that event. But
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me do a little comment on that. Compare notes here because we're having a lot of similar experiences. So when I was between 4 and 5 was very high activity for me. So it was 1958 to 59. And I was on a mothership, and I called it a mothership, and it was very large. It was the middle of the day, total conscious experience. Wasn't at night sleeping, was totally conscious. Don't think I saw anybody else, but I was taken to a room where I was watching a big screen. So we have a lot of contactees who are saying they're shown these screens. And then there was the apocalyptic side view of the Earth, 3 beams coming down to the center, and the whole planet just blew up into stardust. But it continued. There was it was like the scene faded, and they showed me another scene, and it was very interesting when they were showing scenes to me. It wasn't just what was on the screen. It was like whole impressions of, the totality of the Earth and what was going on simultaneously everywhere on the Earth. It was just this whole other level. I can't even begin to explain it. Like I could see, rivers and fish in the rivers and planes and animals running, and I could see what was happening on the Earth when I was shown this image of the Earth, and so the next image it was whole, but there was a lot of destruction. So I was seeing all these scenes of destruction, but that faded, and then there was another scene, and it was much less destruction and more life. And I was shown 24 different scenes, and the ones on the other end of the spectrum were all beautiful utopian outcomes for the Earth. And then they stopped showing me scenes. There were 24 scenes, and then they said, which reality, which universe, which multiverse, I'm not sure what word they used, but that's what it meant, do I choose? And I went, me? And I realized as they were saying it, I was choosing for everybody. And you know, I go, well, that's crazy. But anyway, I chose. And I came down, and then of course, you don't go tell the people in the house that are your parents and your family because they'll think you're nuts. So I had enough wherewithal to not, even at 4. No, I'm not going to tell those people. So, do you have any recollection that it may have continued into something more positive? Or
I don't. I really don't have any recollection of that at all.
Okay, just cut it out.
I just. Yeah, it's good that you did. I mean, who knows if I might remember. I mean, it seems like it's been a very progressive thing where things do come back to me, and in my own journey of discovery. So, but so far, no. I mean, that was a very long time ago. I mean, 1971, my gosh.
Yes.
But throughout my teen years, I really don't have any recollections of any, I'm going to say visitation, but I started having a lot of synchronicity that was just mind-blowing to me because I almost thought that I was a witch. You know, I'm thinking, am I making these things happen? Because this just can't even be real. And in my early 20s, I ended up getting married, and I had my oldest daughter in 1986, and when she was 1 is when I read communion, and that's when the ball started rolling. And in 1989, when she was 3 years old, I had my first experience that involved a family member, and it was her. And,
wow.
Yes, it's quite mind-blowing because all these years I really did think that I had a mild case of insanity, and thought that maybe I just had such a vivid imagination that I was just creating these things in my head, you know. But what had happened was we were living, I was engaged to be remarried. I had since been divorced from her father, and I was engaged, and I was living with my fiancé at the time, and we were laying in bed, and I had actually shared with him that I had had these experiences. He was the first person in my life that I had shared my experiences with as far as having contact, and it was very scary, but I just needed to have somebody in my life that I could just unload upon, you know, just my parents. I couldn't talk to them. I had my friends, you know, my business associates, nobody. So, and he was accepting. He didn't understand it. He had never had the experience, but he just, you know, he loved me unconditionally, and so therefore he embraced me and said that he was there for me. So we had an inside joke, though, because we did have some experiences where we did not sleep well the night prior, and then the next day he would say to me, you know, did the visitors come last night? Because I slept like crap.
Oh,
and
wow.
And I would say, you know what, I think possibly, and that would be it. You know, he wouldn't be freaked out about it. He would just let it be. So it was perfect. But this experience, this one night, I was laying in bed, and I was looking at the ceiling. I couldn't sleep, and all of a sudden I saw all these swirling prismatic lights on the ceiling in different shapes, like squares and circles, and they were just dancing around almost as if a light was refracting through a prism in the window, and maybe a light was, you know, shining in maybe a headlights from a car or something, but there was nothing out there. And I thought, well, that's really strange. And the second I thought that, a gold disc flew in from my window across my bed and manifested into a woman standing right next to me.
Oh, wow.
And I went to look at her, but I couldn't move. But I could move my eyes, and I could see in the dark that it was a woman standing there. And I'd never seen a being that was humanoid before this time, so I was just in shock. And I was like, oh, my God, who are you? What? And she started speaking to me telepathically. And she said, where I come from, marriage is the most sacred part of our existence, and I am giving you the chance to experience this if you wish. And it's like I didn't even think about what she was saying. All I could think about was the situation that I was in, and all I could think about was, I am so glad you don't look like what you really look like, because I think it would freak me out. And she said back to me telepathically, if you want to know what we look like, then look at the window. And in that moment, I had this fascination and curiosity and this intense fear all at the same time. And I just turned my eyes to the window, and I saw a mantis being hanging from my windowsill. And
wow.
That freaked me out. And so I knew that she had manifested into something that wouldn't frighten me. But I had made the choice. Obviously, I was letting go of the fear to look. So when I gasped, I went, oh, my God, she looked at my door in my bedroom, and it flew open, and she dematerialized through the wall, and in came through my bedroom door 3 little blue beings that looked like little Smurfs. And I thought,
wow.
What in the hell is going on right now? I have it's like a 3-ring circus. And now I've got these blue beings, and they're standing at the end of my bed, and they're like a cobalt, kind of like a glowing iridescent blue, and they have these coal black eyes, and they're speaking to me now, saying, it's Elise, my daughter, she's throwing up and we can't get her to stop. Now, I don't know if you're a mother, but when you're a mother and something's wrong with your child, it's just like, forget about it. And I broke out of my paralytic state, and I ran out of my bedroom and down the hall, and she was crying in her bedroom. And I said, Elise, what's wrong, honey? Are you okay? And she said, I'm going to be sick, and she started vomiting all over the bed.
Wow.
So at that moment, then my fiancé woke up. He was asleep that whole time, and I brought her into the bathroom, and I put her in the bathtub and started rinsing out her hair, and she proceeded to vomit. And he changed her bedding, and I came back and put her in bed, and I laid with her until she fell asleep. And then I finally went to bed. And in the morning, she was absolutely fine. And she was in the kitchen. Wow. She was in the kitchenette area getting ready for breakfast, and I went into the kitchen to pour her some juice, and my fiancé said, did the visitors come last night? And I looked at him, and I just said, shh, don't say anything. And I brought her juice over to her, and when I went to the table, she was drawing a picture. And when I looked at the picture, I went, oh, well, hi, honey, what is that? And she says, well, it's the animal from my dream last night. And what she drew was a little round head that had like a squiggly little line over the top of its head. It had 2 little lines where the ears would be. It had a little body and round eyes. And I was mildly freaking out, but at the same time I was very curious. And prompting her without frightening her, I asked her, I said, well, that doesn't really look like an animal. And she said, well, they're not really animals, but they're not really people either. And I said, well, they? And she goes, oh, yeah, Mommy, there were 3 of them, and they were blue.
Oh, my goodness.
And at that moment, I thought, oh, my God, this is real. And so I said, oh, well, that's really interesting, honey. So what were they doing, these 3 blue beings? And she said, well, they were smelling me, and they were telling me that they loved me. And
wow.
And I said, okay, so what is this little thing over his head? And she says, oh, it's a cloud, Mommy. They come from the clouds. And
wow.
I had never, ever talked about any of this in front of her. And so then at that moment I thought, okay, I started getting a little angry because now my experience was involving my daughter. And I had no control over it. And there was nothing I could do. But I didn't want to frighten her. And I just thought, being an experiencer myself, I just need to remember to always be open, to leave the lines of communication open with her because of what my experiences were when I was her age, that I had no one to talk to. And as she got older, every now and then I'd bring something up, and then one day I finally asked her, and she said, Mommy, I don't remember anything, and I don't want to talk about it. And she's 28 now, so she still doesn't have any recollections or that she's even shared with me. I don't know. She's a pretty private person, but I'm hoping that if she does start having recall, that if she doesn't reach out to me, that at least she gets some sort of support from someone. So,
well, yeah. I'm curious. I wanted to talk to you about that. That was very powerful what you just shared, and this reaction, emotional reaction that you had, and then her subsequent response to being a contactee, which is more repressed and yours is more open. What was behind your anger? If your experiences something that angered you and you were afraid? Do you have any logic behind your anger? Yeah.
Okay, my anger is the fact that I had to live a secret life for so long. And I didn't want her to have to go through that. That's my anger. Because I know that it's something that is not, easily talked about. And for her to have counseling, I know how hard it was for me to reach out to anybody at her age. So I just really hope that that's my anger. Now, as far as what, her participation in this experience is, might not be the same as mine. And I do have a little bit of anger to think that the possibilities of hearing the things that other people have gone through, that she might have gone through that as well. Our experiences might not mirror each other. So, therefore, I do have anger because it is against your will. It is something you don't have control over. You hear about women who have pregnancies and hybrids, taken pregnancies that are taken from them and things like that. I just am horrified to think that might happen to her. I don't have any.
So, do you think it is totally against? You mentioned something was very important there. That it's against the will. There's a lot of experiencers that reach a point where they realize this was a contract, an agreement. But let's just look at your perspective.
Right. Well,
so
I agree with that as well.
Okay.
I do agree that there is a possibility that we do choose this and make an agreement to have this path. I do believe that we choose this existence and this life, and I also believe that we have volunteered ourselves to have contact. Therefore, I think that the fear is more based on, I would hate for her to have to live a private life and not be able to enjoy everything, and for her to have to suffer from PTSD and not understand at this point in her life, the evolution of it. Someday she might understand that she has made that agreement, but until that happens, she's 28 now. So how long will it take her for her to get to the point to where she does realize that?
And so have you realized that you have an agreement, and what was that like for you? That realization.
I have a frog in my throat.
Get out, frog.
I started really doing a lot of research about the consciousness, and when I read Dolores Cannon's book, The 3 Ways of Volunteers in the New Earth, made me, because a lot of things about my life started to make sense. And one of them was that the people who are in your life are there because you chose them to be. And so knowing that, I do have a sense that we do choose to have the experience as well, but it might take a lot for somebody to actually evolve enough consciously to understand it. So, I would hope to think that she's in a new relationship with a really great guy who's very open, and his parents were very spiritual. So I'm hoping that being in that situation is going to help her evolve. And once she does, then maybe understand her part in this and maybe look at it in a different light. She does suffer from anxiety. She is having to take medication for it. That is one of my major concerns as well. So hopefully she will get to the point where she won't have to rely on that medication and just start.
Well, what we find, I work with my husband who's a psychotherapist. And
oh, that's right.
A very, very good psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, and we've been working with contactees, experiencers. Well, he's been doing it for 40 years now. And what we find is when people do the catharsis and they release the full emotional impact of the experience, they go into the reprogramming of their psyche and subconscious, and then they no longer need medications. They don't need to go into the government-sanctioned, I was just talking to someone earlier, the government's in the business of pushing drugs, okay? And they have
big pharma.
long-term deleterious effects, including I've done cleanup on three psychotropic drug, government-sanctioned psychotropic suicides. These people long-term use of the psychotropic drugs, and they just one day go ballistic and they kill themselves.
Right.
And that's messy for everybody involved because it's just
absolutely
it's horrible. And so I really encourage you. I am not a mother in the fact that I never gave birth, but I do have children that are hybrids that I've come through this realization, and my children are not a gray hybrid. I'm used in a different program, and there are what I've come to an awareness through my own work, and I'm working with experiencers, contactees, is that there's different programs, different breeding programs. But I don't want to go too much into that because I just wanted to interject that there are ways of moving past using any kind of medications. What you're just medicating is the emotion. Our society requires us to kind of be emotionally stagnant, right? If you're too angry or too happy, then they're always, kind of bring us down to some kind of emotional level that's the norm, right? What's normal.
Right.
But if sometime in your life, and this is what I just addressing, and I'm getting older. My husband's going to be 75, so we're we just lost Dolores Cannon in 2014. We need to train therapists to work with people who have trauma of all kinds, but especially this type of trauma, to go in and do the release and allow the person to move beyond, the dependency on these drugs, which are very, very harmful to the body. Yeah.
Right, I agree. It is very disconcerting for me. I hope that she gets the care that she needs, and she has to be open to it. That's the first step, in recognizing that you do have control of not being dependent on this. So she just needs to learn how to facilitate doing so herself and trusting it. And I really believe that a lot of her anxiety stems from the experience itself and not accepting these things that have happened to her. And like I said, she has not been open with me about it. So there's not a lot I can do. I can't force it out of her. It's something that she has to do on her own.
Where are you in your book process? Are you
I
including these things?
Yes, I am. Yes, she's given me the green light to go ahead and talk about her story, which is pretty huge, and use her name as well. So that's a pretty big step. And
when do you think you'll have that completed?
I hope to have that completed by probably next spring. my problem is that I'm writing 2 books at the same time, so it's really a difficult process because it's the 2 experiences or the 2 books are kind of blending into each other. My first book is about my personal journey, and my second book is about meeting as you've heard, twin flame, soulmate, cosmic twin, whatever you want to call it. It's been such an amazing experience because he is also a lifetime experiencer, and we were brought together after I was interviewed by Whitley Strieber for his Dreamland segment on Unknown Country. And upon hearing my interview, I was contacted by an experiencer, and he said, I cannot believe how many similarities there are in our stories, just really, really a lot of things. And he lived on the East Coast, and he ended up coming up to Maine to meet me when I spoke for the first time in 2012. And we are now living together.
Wow.
And yes, it's been an amazing journey, let me tell you. It's been so many validations about what we were talking about before about volunteering for this life journey and choosing the people in your life. And he recognized me from a photograph when I was a teenager. And
well, I want to address that. That is so profound. First of all, let me go back. Wow, this, I'm sorry to interject, but this is a piece of these are pieces of the puzzle, right? That are they're just coming from all directions. So first of all, I want to go back and say, I think that's why the Smurfs were so popular, because there were the little blue. Remember how the Smurfs were so popular when we were kids?
Yes,
probably
absolutely.
Those were extraterrestrials, and so they didn't know how to
it that way.
They made it into cartoons, right? You used the word Smurf, and that was like, wow, yeah. Second thing is your book. I'm doing the same thing. I'm writing Dance of the Souls. It's like 4 books in one. I just stopped and made book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, just a whole series. I encourage you to just get it out and stop at about 300 pages, get it edited, and say, you continue book 2, because we need your information. And then about the Whitley Strieber, I love Whitley. I went to a whole weekend workshop with Whitley back in the late 90s, 97, I think it was, 97, yeah. And I had him look at my implant, and he didn't know what it was. It didn't look like any other. I go, well, that's typical. Even though I'm an experiencer, nothing is ever like any other experiencer, so I just let it go at that. But he wrote a book called Majestic. I don't know if you read it, but I recommend it to all our listeners. Majestic by Whitley Strieber. And
I did read it.
Roswell. But one thing, remember, the couple was a couple that the ETs wanted to get together. And I think they are arranging marriages. They're arranging unions. They may not be eternal marriages, but they want offspring, or they want the product of the combination of the souls, like you and your twin flame partner, soulmate. You're going to produce something. So it may not be a baby you give birth to, but you have your baby. I'm with my soulmate, and this is my 3rd marriage. You think and I was in my 40s, and this man is amazing. And I go, wow, out of 6.5 or 7 billion people, how did we find each other? Well, it was orchestrated. And
exactly. Ours was completely orchestrated, 100%. I mean, it doesn't even get okay. So he contacted me, and I was very much looking at that point in my life, really into synchronicities and really paying attention to synchronicity and realizing that when you're in the moment and when you're present, synchronicities are there for a reason, and to pay very close attention to synchronicities. And so that's where I was at that moment that we met. And when we started chatting, what had happened was I was writing my book. And when I was writing my book, I got a message. And the message was to close my computer, to go into the bedroom, to turn off the light, sit on the floor, face the armoire, and meditate for 15 minutes. And it was just like very, very specific message.
Wow.
I said, oh, okay. So
okay.
I went into the bedroom and I did that. And I sat there and I waited and nothing happened. Nothing happened. And I went, oh, well, that's really strange. And so after 15 minutes, I went back on my computer and I was now distracted from my writing. So I just logged into Facebook. And as soon as I logged in, I got a little message, blink. And it was this gentleman saying hello to me.
Wow.
And I said, who is this? And I looked at his little thumbnail profile picture, and I went, that looks really familiar. He looks really familiar. So we just started, chit-chatting in a little chat box. And as we're chatting, I'm looking at his profile pictures. And I'm looking at all these pictures, and I'm like thinking, well, where does he look familiar? Is it maybe we have a mutual friend? And I came across a picture of these beautiful young adults, a black and white photo. And then the next picture I saw was of this beautiful Asian woman holding a little child. And I could not stop staring at that picture. And as I'm looking at it, she's staring right at me. Now, this has never happened to me before, but it's like we're locking eyes in a photograph on the computer, okay? And
wow.
She is looking at me, and I typed in the little chat box, I said, this picture, I said, is that your wife? And he said, I said, the woman holding the child, and he said, yes. And I said, she is no longer with us, is she? And he said, no, she passed away in 1997 from colon cancer. I said, I have a message for you. I said, she wants me to tell you that she misses you and that she loves you and that she's so proud of you and that she's all around you all the time. And then I said, you're going to see her again, don't you? And he said, yes. He said, you have no idea how much this means to me because today, which was July 7th, 2012, would have been her 50th birthday. And I've been thinking about her all day. And I said, oh, my God, that is so weird. Today is one of my best friend's 50th birthday. And so we were just started chatting about these weird, numbers. And we started getting into numbers. And then he was saying, I said that those three children were his two daughters and his son that I saw. And then he said that, I said, well, actually, July 7th was my wedding anniversary, too. That's really weird, in 1984. And he says, oh, my gosh, we got married in August of 1984. And I said, how old are you? And he said, I'm 50. I said, oh, my gosh, so am I. And then I just said, let me ask you a question. I said, when's your birthday? And he said, March 26, 1962. I said, you are not going to believe this. That is my exact birthday.
Oh, my God. Amazing.
And I said, okay, I said, now let me tell you something. I said, you looked really familiar to me. Okay, no, when I was a little girl, I always knew I had a brother. And my mother said, no. And I said, Mommy, where's my brother? I thought maybe she'd had a miscarriage or maybe she'd given a boy up for adoption, and she just swore to me that she never had a male child. So I told this to him, and we started looking at our baby pics. Or, do you remember me at this age and this age? And then he came to a picture of me when I was in junior high, and I was actually dressed as the being that I saw on the craft with the cape and everything, and I had an amulet that he had worn, and he recognized me from that. Now, he has since last June had a regression done by Yvonne Smith, and he recalled an event that happened with me. I didn't want to know about it because, I don't know, it just freaked me out. I'm like, okay, this is your journey. I don't want to have regression for that very reason. So, but he was adamant. He had to know. So he did remember me from a situation when we were younger.
You were on board ship together?
Yes.
Or wherever they take us. See,
right, exactly.
I don't know if you remember back in the 60s, what was her name? Gene Dixon. I remember walking to school, and Gene Dixon, they were saying on the radio, and, we had those little transistor radios, right, little handheld things. We were listening to the radio. It was the 60s, Beatles were popular, all this stuff was going on. And they're making fun of her like they always do, right, the giggle factor. They said, Gene Dixon said that the extraterrestrials are taking children, and she said that they were matching them up, the children on the spaceships. They were doing matchmaking with children. And I never forgot that. Nobody ever talked about it. Never. So I had two different relationships. And you know how when you meet people, you go, oh, okay, I'm going to see your childhood pictures. And I would get to the pictures of them when they were little boys, and my jaw would drop, and I go, I know this little boy right here.
Right.
And we were together on this ship. And now this was two different relationships I had. Now I went through, after the second marriage, I went through a divorce. I was in my 40s, dating a lot. And so it was during that period between when 4 years, and I had been pretty monogamous all my life. But they were encouraging me to have relationships, especially when I was heading towards menopause, because they told me that they would retrieve semen from my vaginal wall and use them to create children. And they wanted to have different fathers, and that they don't limit the offspring to just one mother, one father. They can just use your DNA, just like we're doing it now. We're mixing all kinds of DNA together.
Exactly.
So that was, so we had the same thing. But I've always known Sasha, my current husband, and that goes pre-humanoid, pre-human existence.
Right.
So I've gone all the way back to other incarnations as other forms, extraterrestrials and interdimensionals and multidimensionals, different levels. So continue. This is quite interesting. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it is quite interesting. So we also felt a sense of urgency that we were supposed to be working on something together. We didn't know what it was, but we just felt very compelled that we had to be together. And there were no two ways about it. And so we had decided that he would come to, like I said, go to Maine and meet me there. And then I was considering moving here, for the first time in my life, moving out of California, leaving everything and coming here, and which I did. And so that has definitely been a really interesting journey, because we have had so many experiences since we've been together, but they're different. And he's very evolved also consciously. He also does Reiki, and so he has been doing energy work for years, which is something I didn't know about him when I first met him. But I think that we're very much at the same place in our lives and with the experience. And he and I, our bookshelves mirror each other. We've read this. We're just on the same path. And come to realize that we more than likely have made an agreement to meet again in this space-time to do this work together. And he produces all of my shows now on my podcast, and he's very good at it. So that was really great. That's something that we are working on together. We've had just great experience. Well, just the sharing part of it and helping each other, supporting each other, unlike anybody we've ever had in our lives prior, has been really wonderful. But just the conscious part of it, just getting to the point to where we realize, okay, this is what's really happening now. These things might very well be interdimensional. We feel that we're being monitored, and I say this I will keep it very G-rated for your show, but sexually we are being monitored. We feel we've had shared dream experiences that have involved the same beings at the same time that were very sexual. So we're trying to really try and have a discovery about that. And it's very difficult because a lot of people don't talk about that part of the experience. It's very, very delicate, obviously.
Right.
Like you were saying, as far as the DNA is concerned, we know that there's definitely something going on. I mean, I had an experience just up until like 3 weeks ago where we had something happen where I was woken up in the middle of the night. It felt like he had fallen back into bed from the ceiling.
Oh, wow.
Woke me up out of a dead sleep, and he was crawling in the bed like he was trying to scurry away from something. And I woke up and my heart was racing. I thought I was having a heart attack. And I jumped up out of the bed and I ran across the house into the kitchen. And all I could think is that I've got to get out of here. And I opened the sliding glass door into the backyard, and I looked up at the apple tree, and I said, "Is that the moon?" And there was this light shining down onto the grass. Now, it might very well have been the moon. It might have been, but I thought, like I said, I had to sit in the den for an hour to try and calm down. My adrenaline was pumping so hard. But what's really interesting, I just thought this. Last year, the Saturday before Christmas, which is today.
Oh, my goodness. Here we go. Another synchronicity.
Which is
happened
today.
The Saturday before Christmas?
The Saturday before Christmas, a year ago. My boyfriend, his name is Jack, he works for UPS, and he works the night shift, and he usually gets home at about 4 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes I'll fall asleep in the den and then wake up when he comes home, and then we'll just go in the bedroom and go to bed. So that happened. We went back to bed at about 5:15 in the morning, and as I'm laying in bed, we have 2 windows in the bedroom. One of them faces west and one of them faces north. The north-facing window was bright light, and the west-facing window was dark. And I knew that it wasn't sunrise yet because it was daylight savings, so it was still pretty dark.
Right.
So I said to him, I said, "Well, isn't that weird? Look at the window, how bright it is." And he didn't say anything. And I got up and I went up to the window and I pulled back the curtain. And when I did that, there was a light that it almost like collapsed in itself, almost like the shutter in a camera. And like it vanished into nothing. And I said, well, that was really weird. So I went to bed and fell asleep. So usually in the mornings, and when we wake up, I usually wake up before he does. But this morning when I woke up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, being as we had gone to sleep so late, he was already out of bed. So I got up and put on my slippers, and I went down the hallways, and I'm walking down the hallway. He comes out of the den, and he stopped in his tracks, like I startled him. And I said, "What's wrong?" And he says, "Where were you?" And I said, "What do you mean, where was I?" He says, "You weren't in bed?" I said, "I'm in my pajamas. I just got out of bed." He says, "No, you weren't. I called your name. I looked all over the house. You were nowhere."
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm thinking, okay, what are you saying right now? Because now I'm freaking out. Because I've never had an experience where I've actually physically been missing out of this space. And he said, "I'm telling you, I looked in bed, you were nowhere." And I said, "I just got out of bed." So my first thought is, remember. Okay, what was I dreaming? Where was I? What was happening? And I said, "Oh, my gosh, give me a piece of paper and a pen." And I started drawing the best that I could recollect, some information that I think I was receiving. Maybe it was part of the dream, but what I was being shown was all the different dimensions, how it was almost like if you took a slinky and you open it up slightly, and how they all connect at that one short end, when you fan it out. So I was drawing that, and then I drew a smaller one bisecting them. And I was saying, okay, see that middle point? That's where they all bisect, okay? And it's almost like the arrow that says, you are here. But what I was getting the impression of was that where everything bisects, we all blip in and out of every dimension at different points, and so that's why we're having these things appear to us in this dimension, in this time frame, for us to see, whether it be a ghostly apparition, maybe like residual energy, or even an ET being, or or our dead relatives, or what have you. But it's like all of a sudden, like that thing started making sense to me, and I'm thinking, I still don't know what happened. I still have no idea. But
so you were having see, time is not linear. That's the thing that's missing from this experience. So you were missing from his time, but you had no missing time from your time.
Right, exactly.
This time is not linear, because they can literally return us to 1 second before we left, right?
Right.
Or they won't do that because they want you to experience seeing yourself. So, wow. So what do you, as a lifelong experiencer contactee, what do you think is the purpose of this whole phenomenon that is affecting literally millions of people are waking up and remembering, or at least recovering an incident? Maybe they are like you and I, they have 30 incidences, but people are waking up and realizing that there's something beyond our five senses reality and our 3D world that we're being given through our religions and our normal perspective that the powers that be, the government, is putting out there as our matrix. What do you think is the purpose of this whole experimenting with the extraterrestrials?
Well, I think everything you just said is pretty much, I think, what we're supposed to awaken to, all of us. And it's almost like we have forgotten. We need to remember who we are and why we're here. I think that's the main thing that we need to understand, that maybe it's a collective. It's like we all have to be on that plane. We can't have deteriorate. We are going to be our own. We are going to become our own. The reason why we demise. It's at our own hands. But we have to remember that we have the power to consciously take control of who we are and not be in control of all the things that you just said, and by talking about these things, slowly people are starting to have more and more radio shows. They're starting to write more and more books about it. More people are talking about it. We need to raise the vibration of this earth. Okay? We are not, I'm thinking about all the hums that are happening on the earth. Have you thought about that?
All the what?
What
was the word you said, all the what?
Like the hum, the deep hums and the...
Oh, the hums,
the hums, right. It's almost like the earth is weeping or crying or moaning, or it's just like we have to remember that we have this gift that we are taking advantage of. We have control to take the reins and say, okay, we are going to I'm going to say save the world. I want to be, so hoity-toity about that. But it's more like, it's really hard for me to put into words because I myself am still trying to find out what it is. And anybody that says that they know what it is, they don't. Because I don't think we know.
Right. We only have hypotheses.
We can only speculate.
Getting a lot of information from everywhere, different people, and it is emerging like a group gestalt. The pieces that don't fit are kind of falling away, and ultimately, like the 24 multiverses I was shown, which only is a limited view of all that exists, is that we are the chooser of what we want to co-create together here. That's my understanding. Right. The hum that you were talking about, and listeners, please take all this with a grain of salt and make your own decisions.
Exactly.
But what I understand is it's a possibility that Nibiru has returned. We are shifting. Now, I'm not into the apocalypse stuff. I was shown the apocalypse. That was an option I could have chosen and gone through an experience. I chose the utopian one. And I'm still on that timeline. And, over here, and I'm looking at the other timelines, and I go, well, that's an interesting choice, but I don't want to go into, and for me, when the extraterrestrials are showing these continual views of apocalypse, it's almost like they're promoting their worldview, and I say, well, thank you very much for showing me that, but that's not what I want to participate in. So sometimes I get kind of, messianic in my mission. However, there was a reason I was shown 24 multiverses, and that I am the chooser. And that means you are the chooser. That means we are the chooser. And we don't have to go down some path that someone else is trying to sell us, because it's not going to serve us as for the highest good for all beings. So I just went way far out. Well, whatever you said, I'm sorry. I almost feel like I'm in an altered state of consciousness talking to you, and maybe I am.
And maybe that's a good thing.
Yes. This is a powerful conversation for me.
Yeah, it is. I think that it's what's happening is once we start realizing that certain things resonate with all of us, that it's having that resonance and having that energy to do the right things and to recognize the factors of being dumbed down and being distracted from what's really real.
Great. Well, let's talk a little bit about your work and your mission. So you're writing 2 books, you're doing a podcast like I am, and how often do you broadcast?
I do my podcast when I feel that I can. Let's put it that way. I'm not as diligent as I should be. I tend to do maybe 1 or 2 a month. I used to have a weekly show, but it just proved to be too difficult to do live. So I enjoy doing the show as a podcast and being able to go as long as I want and things like that. That's really important to me, because sometimes there's just a lot more to say than time allows. I also started blogging my experiences back in 2011. I did this for my own benefit and for my own sanity, because I felt that I needed to get these things on paper and document my experiences in a chronological manner. And I also wanted to do it to try and reach out to other people who were afraid to speak about this publicly, but might be able to find some sort of communion, if I could use that word, in knowing that they weren't alone in the experience. Some people contact me anonymously, and I think that's the way that it should be for, on a case-to-case scenario. But it seems to be more and more people are coming out, and they are not anonymous, and I think that's great, because that's part of the journey, is letting go of the fear of I hate to say the term abduction, too, because I think it's more of an experience than an abduction, because there are so many things to think about as far as if we already decide to be part of it before our incarnation here. So when I say abduction, it sounds very negative. So I use that term loosely. I have found that people all over the world are all the same, and I just interviewed somebody whom I've never met before that was brought to my attention by a fellow researcher named Grant Cameron, whom I think you know. And,
I love Grant. Awesome.
Yeah, so Grant is a great guy, and he said to me that he had heard something very similar in another experience's story to mine. And I interviewed him a couple of days ago. I should have it posted within the week. But our experiences on the craft with this being were almost identical. Right down to the cure for cancer, right down to what he was wearing, right down to the amulet that he had over his heart chakra. I mean, we were both blown away, and at the same time not, if you know what I mean, because
Right.
It was just it's just such a great validation to hear such a fine detail of an experience from somebody
so
you've
talk
never
about
met.
The cancer thing. You said that it's something like toothpaste.
Yeah.
What are the elements of toothpaste? Maybe it is in toothpaste. It's not the fluoride.
Well, I've heard about baking soda. And bicarbonate of soda is used in a lot of toothpaste. So that is also has been speculated that could be it. Keeping the body in an alkaline state. So maybe there's something to be said about that. I don't know. But then again, I was 9, so
Well, you're 9, but you're also an eternal being.
That's true.
That was true. When I was on board craft, when I was the incident when I was 4, and my eternal self. So I was physically in my 4-year-old body, but for that moment, I knew who I was as an eternal being, and they were addressing me as this person who was an eternal being who had, of course, this is part of what I needed to see. What my understanding from Dr. Michael Newton's research on life in between lives, which is quite profound, over thousands of different people doctors, is that we are eternal beings and we have these jobs that we do when we're on the other side, and that we're actually in a symbiotic relationship with our body. So our soul comes down, and there's these bodies, and the body is constructed because of its DNA and all kinds of factors, and the body has consciousness as well. And so when we incarnate, we have to integrate with this body. When the soul integrates into the body, and then we have this, synthesis of two beings. And so we have a responsibility to the body, because the body cannot exist without the soul. Once the soul leaves, it dies, right? So, so that's what was going on aboard ship for me. I had the awareness of the separation of the body, which was a form that had 4 years of experience in living, and yet I was an eternal soul. So it was kind of a schism, but it was interesting to separate and have that realization. Of course, once I came back down on Earth again, I was kind of beamed back. It was interesting because I remember stepping over a little fence. Foot was up in the air, and then when I returned, literally my foot was going back down. But it was it was sunset, and when I left, it was high noon. So many hours went by. But it was so once I was back on the Earth, it faded. It's like these things fade because you have to go back and be a little girl, right? You have to get up and go to school. So that's why there's this confusion. It's almost like you're in a duality of existence, and so there's self-censoring, because how do you get up and be a little girl when you've just had this profound experience with the cosmos and all these beings? So I think there'll be a little girl day, because that's what I am. I'm right here in this body. I'm a little girl. Here I go. Go to the garden.
Exactly.
Right.
Everything in its time.
I'm getting to the point where I think we're about complete. Is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners about your experiences or your life?
I would just say, for anybody out there who has had these experiences, whether they be lifetime or just even recent, that there are support groups out there who you can contact, who will be there for you. And I am part of Starborn Support, which is here based out of the East Coast, but also in South America and now on the West Coast. And you can go online, and we have a website there. And I just really think that we just need to all not be afraid to share, and to know that we are here for each other. And again, I always would like to contact or have contactees contact me and share their stories with me if they have any questions at all. No question is too crazy to ask, as you well know. If you would like to contact me, my email address is abducteeawareness@gmail.com. my blog site is abducteeawareness.blogspot.com, and my podcast is Random Alien Brain Droppings.
I love that name. It makes me laugh all the time. So starbornreport.com is here, and coincidentally, I just started extraterrestrialcontact.ning.com, which is a you can sign up, you can share, you can talk to other people. It's kind of interactive, but I do encourage you to go to these experiencers conferences. I encourage the experiencers conference organizers to contact me, Janet-Lessin, at aquarianradio@gmail.com. I'd like to see. I had a vision. My visions are downloads from the extraterrestrials, so I guess I'll just say this. They want us to have them more strategically located, like one of the northeast, southeast, mid central, mid south, and northwest, and northwest.
I agree.
Anyway, these lists have 6 locations, and we can have them like 6 times a year and every other month, and then we will have these events where, and I know there's tons of experiencers out there. So
every year there's more and more attendees. So you're absolutely right about that.
We need to do this. In the meanwhile, go to Starborn Support, go to extraterrestrialcontact.ning.com, contact me, aquarianradio@gmail.com, contact Suzanne. We're here. We will listen to your story. We'll direct you to support. One of the things that my husband just did some therapy this morning, and we can do Skype therapy with people. That's something that we can do. We don't have to be there. Yeah.
Right.
So if you guys need Skype therapy, contact us. I don't know what to call it therapy. Right. Just counseling and coaching.
Right, exactly. Support.
Yeah. Support.
Definitely.
Right.
Yep. Well, I want to thank you so much, Janet, for having me on your show tonight and contacting me. And hopefully we will meet at a conference sometime soon for experiencers. That would be great.
Well, I will be at UFO Congress in February.
In Arizona.
Are you going?
I'm not going. I really wished I could be there, but we have people coming to visit, so it's not going to happen.
All right, but that's one of the big ones. It's like a big family reunion. They get 1,000 to 2,000 people going through. It's one of the biggest ones that we have going because they've been around for 20 plus, going on somewhere around 20, 25 years. That's why it's so big. They've got a huge following. And then I am working at a Ancient Mysteries conference in March. So I'll be putting that detail up on my main website is Aquarian Radio, aquarianradio.com and aquarianradio@gmail.com. So I'll put the list of conferences. Are you going to, the other field that I do besides experiencers is the Anunnaki. So that's what my husband is really involved with and I am involved with. So we have a website called Enki Speaks. But Suzanne, are you going to be presenting at any conferences this year?
I will be presenting again next year in September. So far, that's the only one I have, which will also, again, be in Portland, Maine for the 3rd Experiencer Speak Conference. So I hope, that'll be the 4th, my goodness. So we have 2012, 2013, and 2014. So 2015, Portland, Maine, Experiencer Speak.
Well, I wish I could be there, but it's just so far away. Unless I'm already on the mainland, and it's not. But it's still, is there a Portland, Maine? Is that a major airport?
Yeah.
Okay. That's key for these events is somewhere that you can fly into. Because if you fly in and after, people come to these conferences literally from all over the planet. They come from Australia and South Africa and South America, and it's like you don't want to be flying for 20 hours and then have to drive for 3. So conference organizers, make them near a major so we can get there. Well,
That's
thank
right.
you so much for coming on this show. It's been a delight. Let's do this again some other time. I apologize to those who thought we were going to simulcast.
No worries.
And I just want to say, if you want to go over to the 2J Morris ET radio, you can do so at 347-945-7207, listeners. I'm actually going to close the show, and then I'm going to go call in for the last 15 minutes myself just to say hi. Usually TJ goes an extra hour. Blog Talk will let you go a third hour. So if you call before the top of the hour or whatever your time zone, you can still get on and listen to another hour. So, Susan, thank you so much. And let's
thank you, Janet,
again.
and aloha and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, aloha, love, and blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.